In recent weeks, a storm has been gathering on the horizon of North American relations, one that threatens to upend decades of cooperation and mutual dependence between the United States and Canada. What began with a series of controversial statements from the current White House leader has now escalated into an economic standoff of unprecedented proportions. Accusations that Canada is smuggling fentanyl to poison Americans, coupled with subtle threats of land annexation, have transformed what was once a friendly border into a battlefield of tariff retaliations and economic boycotts. No longer merely a warning, the counterattack is in full swing. The fallout has been swift and severe. With the tourism sector taking an enormous hit, nearly 80% of Canadian tourists, a vital revenue stream for the United States, have suddenly vanished from cities like Las Vegas, Florida resort towns, and Maine relaxation spots. Localized tourism crises have erupted as traffic from Canada, historically critical to the U.S. economy, has plummeted by approximately 75 to 80%, far exceeding even the most pessimistic forecasts. This decline in tourism has left once bustling hotspots struggling to remain afloat, as revenues shrink dramatically and communities bear the brunt of lost economic activity. At the heart of these developments is a complex interplay of sharp rhetoric and immediate retaliatory measures. After President Trump's controversial remarks, long familiar friend and neighbor Canada has responded not with words but with practical economic action. Instead of staging protests or launching media campaigns, Canadian leadership opted for direct countermeasures, measures that are as quiet as they are deeply wounding. Canadian analysts and economic strategists have painted a picture of an unfolding crisis. Estimates suggest that the sector's direct losses could reach as much as $9 billion USD within this year alone, though experts warn that the true impact may be exponentially higher, especially if the boycott continues unabated. Tourism, once a thriving industry enriched by the steady flow of Canadian visitors, is losing its lifeblood. As U.S. states lose billions in revenue, entire supply chains dependent on tourist spending in sectors ranging from hospitality to retail are now facing unforeseen challenges. Parallel to the collapse in tourism, Canadian investors are beginning to pull the plug on their long-standing investments in the U.S. real estate market. Historically, Canadians have been major players in U.S. real estate, securing properties in states as diverse as California, Arizona, and Florida. However, the prospects of inflation, fears over property values, and the looming shadow of social instability have spurred a dramatic withdrawal. It is not merely concerns over economic indicators owing to inflation or property devaluation. Rather, the anxiety stems from a broader fear of arbitrary detention, targeted harassment, and even inexplicable deportation. Canadian media reports highlight mounting worries about public health, especially in the wake of measles outbreaks that have reignited debates over U.S. health standards. As Canadian snowbirds cancel their long-term stays and begin selling off homes with increasing urgency, the dependable streams of revenue once enjoyed by U.S. states are evaporating, leaving an indelible mark on the bilateral economic relationship. In response to the economic and diplomatic pressures exerted by U.S. tariffs, Ottawa has rolled out a sweeping retaliatory strategy. With a calculated response amounting to $60 billion in tariffs, Canada has targeted industrial goods, particularly U.S.-made automobiles, to punish what it perceives as unjustified and illegal tariffs imposed by its neighbor. Interim Prime Minister Mark Carney stressed that these measures, though implemented with deep regret, were a necessary response to defend Canadian economic sovereignty. We do that with regret in the sense of we're responding to unjustified, illegal, and misguided tariffs in the United States, Carney declared, highlighting an irony in which the nation is forced into an aggressive posture against a longtime ally. This tit-for-tat mechanism has not been enacted impulsively, but rather was the culmination of careful legal and financial preparations in anticipation of potential U.S.-imposed tariffs. The consequences of this unilateral move are expected to ripple across entire supply chains, which include critical products like wheat, aluminum, electronics, and pharmaceuticals, crippling domestic production that has long relied on the integrated cross-border operations that once defined North American trade. The history of escalating trade tensions is punctuated with incidents that underscore the fragility of even the most enduring alliances. It all began with rising tensions between the Trump administration and Ottawa, when the U.S. raised aluminum and steel tariffs from Canada to 50%, imposed a 25% tax on Ontario's electricity, and even made a jocular suggestion that Canada should become the 51st state of the United States, a statement that many consider less a diplomatic proposal and more a high-handed insult. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that, Trump remarked, as he dismissed Canada's strategic significance by claiming, with Canada, we don't need their cars, we don't need their lumber, we don't need their energy. The apparent irony was not lost on observers, given that the U.S. has long subsidized Canada with nearly $200 billion a year in economic support. In a perfunctory yet scathing tone, the president contended that if Canada were ever to become a state, it would mean a great tax cut and an array of improved services. Yet this jest sowed the seeds of an economic backlash that soon manifested as Canada calmly deployed a well-calculated strategy in response. If you're enjoying this detailed breakdown of ongoing events, consider subscribing to our channel and joining our vibrant community by liking and commenting on our videos. Your engagement helps us continue delivering in-depth, unbiased analyses of these complex developments. Moving forward, we observe that the retaliatory measures have not only targeted trade goods, but have also triggered profound economic shifts deep within the structural fabric of both nations. For instance, the Windsor Car Assembly Plant, one of the largest manufacturing facilities in Canada, faced a shutdown lasting at least 2 weeks following the imposition of tariffs on the Canadian auto industry. This single decision by the White House resulted in the sudden unemployment of 3,600 workers. A stark reminder that behind the rhetoric and high-level negotiations lie real lives disrupted and communities left in uncertainty. What makes this situation even more dramatic is that the ensuing economic fallout does not stop with job losses or factory closures, but extends to consumer prices and market stability. Analysts have noted that Trump's tariff policy, initially touted as a mechanism to protect American jobs, has ironically produced an economic environment where commodity prices have skyrocketed, inflation has soared, and job losses have become a recurring headline. In this intricate interplay of policy and counterpolicy, the U.S. economy teeters on the precipice of recession, and domestic industries are increasingly vulnerable to the cascading effects of global trade volatility. Even those who once championed the concept of America First are now witnessing the adverse outcomes of a policy that seems increasingly designed for short-term gains rather than long-term stability. Adding another twist to the unfolding saga, there is now chatter among Canadian policymakers about the possibility of aligning more closely with the European Union. In a surprising turn of events, a survey by Abacus Data revealed that 44% of Canadians support the idea of joining the European Union, a sentiment that speaks volumes about the nation's discontent with the current U.S. approach. Although Canada is geographically separated from Europe, its historical, cultural, and political ties to the old continent have long positioned it as an outlier among traditional U.S. allies. Proponents of closer European integration argue that such a move, while fraught with legal and institutional challenges, including overhauling its legal systems, adapting agricultural standards, and potentially even transitioning from the Canadian dollar to the euro, could serve as a strategic counterbalance to the economic pressures imposed by American policies. Whether Canada opts for full membership or a more limited association akin to the Norway or Switzerland models, the shift would represent a profound recalibration of its long-standing alliance with the United States, signaling a move toward diversification and economic independence. The multifaceted economic warfare now being waged between the United States and Canada is compounded by the introduction of new measures that extend far beyond conventional trade disputes. The U.S. government has faced severe criticism from domestic and international experts alike, with predictions that the average tariff in the United States could reach a staggering 29%, the highest level seen since the 1930s. Industry giants in steel and aluminum are facing material costs that are not only skyrocketing, but are also fostering fierce global competition. Recent data from the World Trade Organization, WTO, reveals that U.S. exports to major trading partners such as the EU and Canada have experienced significant declines. For instance, steel production in the U.S. declined by 8% in the first quarter of 2025, a downturn that has sent shockwaves through domestic manufacturing and further destabilized an already volatile market. Major financial institutions like J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs have noted that the U.S. stock market experienced its largest drop in 6 months, the steepest decline since the 2008 financial crisis, owing largely to investor fears sparked by the new tariff policies. In a twist that might seem almost comical if it weren't so severe, some observers have quipped that Trump's economic strategy is like an unintentional magic trick. He makes tariffs appear and American prosperity disappear. It is a wry comment that encapsulates the irony of the situation. Policies designed to bolster the economy instead have sown widespread instability, with consumer prices rising by anywhere from 5% to 15% across a range of essential goods. As American families struggle with these inflated costs, the indirect tax burden of tariffs could eventually amount to as much as $6 trillion, an enormous figure that underscores the far-reaching impact of decisions made in Washington. This is not the economic renaissance many had envisioned, but rather a cautionary tale of how rapid policy shifts can have unexpected and deeply disruptive consequences. Still, the drama is far from over. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has emerged as a steadfast figure, determined to steer Canada through these turbulent times. In a series of decisive measures, Carney has not only implemented tariffs on U.S. goods, but has also taken several bold steps to boost domestic welfare and strengthen Canada's position on the global stage. His administration has cut income taxes for low-income families, allowing each household to retain an additional $820 per year, and abolished the carbon tax that had long burdened farmers and small businesses. Such measures are part of a broader strategy aimed at cushioning the blow of Trump's policies while fostering a sustainable, self-reliant future. Carney's actions extend beyond immediate economic countermeasures. He has also signed a new defense agreement with Australia, expanded trade negotiations with the European Union, and laid the groundwork for an integrated economic federation that transcends provincial boundaries. As he has repeatedly stated, we are stronger when united, a slogan that resonates deeply with Canadians who have grown weary of what they perceive as unilateral aggression from their neighbor. Amid these robust responses, Canada's calculated move to impose a 25% tariff on all U.S. imported cars that do not comply with the USMCA agreement speaks volumes about its commitment to measured retaliation. Notably, Canadian authorities have deliberately avoided extending tariffs to car parts, a decision made to preserve the integrity of an integrated production system that underpins the auto industry. Instead, the focus remains squarely on finished vehicles, a tactic that ensures that the retaliatory measures target economic vulnerabilities without causing a total collapse of the production line. This nuanced approach reflects a deeply analytical strategy, one that is intended not only to inflict immediate economic pain, but also to safeguard long-term industrial stability. In many ways, it is a testament to the fact that even in the midst of a heated economic dispute, pragmatism and foresight are crucial. It would be easy to dismiss these high-stakes maneuvers as mere political grandstanding. After all, politics often seems to resemble a game of hardball, where consequences are measured only in tariffs and trade deficits. Yet the reality is far more sobering. Behind every tariff and every trade statistic lies the daily reality of individuals, workers, families, small business owners, whose lives are directly impacted by decisions made at the highest levels of government. The shutdown of the Windsor car assembly plant, for example, is not simply a line in an economic report. It represents 3,600 workers waking up to uncertainty and economic hardship at the hands of a policy that seems both arbitrary and indiscriminate. As these economic shocks ripple outward, both countries are faced with a stark and inescapable truth. Every unilateral measure in this trade war carries the weight of real human consequences. For those of you tuning in, consider this a call to action. If you appreciate a balanced, no-nonsense analysis of global events, please subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement not only fuels our drive to uncover the full story, but also helps foster a community where dialogue can thrive. Do you think these retaliatory measures will force a long-term shift in North American trade relations, or will a compromise eventually prevail? We'd love to hear your perspective, As the narrative unfolds, it becomes evident that the repercussions of this dispute extend well beyond the realm of economics. The grand design of trade policy, with its lofty promises of economic rejuvenation and national protection, has given way to a reality in which every decision reverberates through multiple layers of society, from international alliances to the everyday expenditures of American consumers. Trump's declaration of April the 2nd as Liberation Day, a so-called celebration of economic independence, now stands as a stark reminder of the unintended consequences of aggressive tariff policies. What was meant to be a rallying cry for reclaiming American industry has instead become a symbol of divisiveness and economic disruption. In the eyes of many, what began as a promise of liberation now appears to be an economic invasion, a sentiment shared by Canadian leaders who have responded with firm resolve and calculated measures. Notably, President Trump's rhetoric and actions have also ignited a wider international backlash. The European Union, Australia, Japan, the United Kingdom, and even the lesser-known Penguin Islands, if you can believe that even isolated territories aren't spared from this geopolitical tempest, have all reacted strongly to the new series of tariffs. The EU, for instance, has retaliated with tariffs worth $28 billion on U.S. products ranging from cars to wine and agricultural products. Such moves signal a clear effort among global partners to shield their own economic interests while sending a resolute message to Washington. Aggressive unilateral actions will not be tolerated. This widespread pushback is fostered by a growing belief that America's economic policies, instead of protecting domestic interests, are in fact undermining the infrastructural foundations of global trade. One might even joke, with just a hint of irony, that if tariffs were an Olympic sport, the United States would be setting records for turning every shopping trip into a taxing experience. Behind the polished rhetoric and negotiated tariffs is a climate of political uncertainty, a reality underscored by warnings from seasoned politicians and economic pundits alike. Former Australian Prime Minister John Howard and Republican Senator Rand Paul have both voiced strong criticisms, highlighting the political and economic follies inherent in such drastic measures. Historical comparisons are drawn to tariff impositions by McKinley in 1890 and Hadi in the early 1930s, moments when similar policies led to disastrous electoral outcomes and long-term damage to national prestige. Critics have not minced words, describing the current approach as nothing short of economically illiterate, while paradoxically maintaining that domestic protectionism has become a rallying cry in parts of the political spectrum. One cannot help but wonder, in the relentless pursuit of national gain, is it possible that the true cost of these policies is being overlooked by those in power? Such questions underscore the broader debate about whether short-term gains can ever justify the long-term ravages of economic isolation and disrupted international alliances. As we look ahead, the future of U.S.-Canada relations hangs in the balance. On one hand, Trump's policies continue to provoke retaliatory actions that threaten the fabric of North American trade, while on the other, Canadian leadership under Mark Carney is demonstrating a resolve to not only counter these measures, but also to redefine its strategic alliances. The possibility of Canada forging a closer relationship with the European Union, potentially even seeking full membership, represents a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape. Although there are considerable hurdles to overcome, such as adapting long-standing legal frameworks, agricultural standards, and even considering a transition from the Canadian dollar to the euro, the very discussion itself speaks to a wider disillusionment with absolute dependence on American economic direction. In this context, Canada's all-in response is as much about protecting its own destiny as it is about sending a clear message to the world. The era of unquestioned U.S. leadership in the region is drawing to a close. Mark Carney's vigorous domestic reforms, ranging from tax cuts for the low-income to the abolition of burdensome carbon taxes, are emblematic of a broader vision that seeks to fortify Canadian society, both economically and socially. His leadership, marked by a willingness to engage in early elections on April 28th to secure a robust mandate, underscores an unwavering commitment to national sovereignty and the reassertion of Canadian dignity. In his own words, Carney has made it abundantly clear that Trump wants to divide us to dominate us, but we will not bow down. This declaration is not merely a political slogan. It resonates deeply with citizens across Canada who have witnessed firsthand the adverse effects of policies that favor short-sighted protectionism over long-term prosperity. The ripples of these developments are already being felt in every corner of the economy, from rising energy costs and mounting inflation to the very real threat of job losses among workers who find themselves caught in the crossfire of this massive tariff storm. Within this climate of uncertainty and rapid change, economists warn that the U.S. might face a prolonged recession if diplomatic efforts do not yield a compromise soon. Forecasts from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, suggest that if the trade war continues unabated, global economic growth could slow significantly, with the U.S. economy potentially contracting by up to 2% in 2026. Such predictions come on the heels of mounting consumer dissatisfaction and market instability, as evidenced by dramatic drops in major stock indexes like the S&P 500 and Dow Jones. The fallout is not limited to high-level financial markets. Everyday Americans are increasingly hit by higher prices on products ranging from automobiles to consumer electronics, forcing households to tighten budgets amid rising living costs. As the world's economic heartbeat slows under the weight of these trade disputes, one is left to ponder the broader implications for international cooperation. With allies like Australia, the EU, Japan, and the United Kingdom taking coordinated retaliatory measures, the once unifying notion of free trade appears to be fragmenting under unilateral pressures and self-serving policies. Meanwhile, the internal void created by these aggressive strategies is being filled with uncertainty, discontent, and yes, even a bit of ironic humor as shoppers lament that America's greater, but my wallet sure isn't. In a scenario where every tariff and counter-tariff chips away at the fabric of long-standing alliances, the price tag on protectionism is proving to be one that no consumer, business, or nation can truly afford. In conclusion, the economic tug-of-war between the United States and Canada is emblematic of a broader struggle for control, identity, and survival in today's volatile global order. The retaliatory measures from Canada's $60 billion tariffs and calculated bans on non-compliant vehicles to the dramatic withdrawal of tourism and real estate investments signal an irreversible shift in the regional balance of power. The cascading impacts of these actions extend far beyond balance sheets. They cut deeply into the livelihoods of workers, families, and communities that have long depended on the previous paradigm of cross-border cooperation. As trade barriers escalate and political rhetoric intensifies, both nations face the profound challenge of rebuilding trust and reimagining their economic futures under new global realities. So, what do you think? With every dramatic twist in this high-stakes saga, where long-held alliances are tested and the very lives of millions hang in the balance, can the United States and Canada mend the fractures in their relationship? Or are we witnessing the dawn of a new era defined by economic isolation and strategic realignment? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you appreciate our comprehensive insights into these complex issues, please hit that subscribe button and share this analysis with your friends. Your support and engagement truly make a difference as we continue to deliver unbiased, expert perspectives on the stories shaping our world. In this extraordinary moment of change, the decisions made by both sides will have repercussions that reverberate far beyond trade statistics and fiscal reports. They will ultimately determine the future of an alliance that has long stood as a beacon of stability in a turbulent global landscape. The challenge now lies in balancing national interests with the imperative for international solidarity. As the trade war simmers and the debates rage on in boardrooms, parliaments, and dinner tables alike, one undeniable fact remains. In the high-stakes game of global economics, there are no true winners when protectionist policies replace cooperative progress. Only time will reveal whether these hard-fought measures will restore stability or drive further wedges into the very foundations of North American unity.